it's Mo. Now that 2022 is over, it's time to look back at my 21 books I found out about in 2021, but I wanted to read in 2022 list. I already did do a look back at the 20 books I found out about in 2020 that I had wanted to read in 2021 list and video that I did, so you can check that linked down below. I will also link my original video for the 21 books I found out about in 2021, but I wanted to read in 2022. But let's watch that video together and see how many books out of this list of 21 that I actually did read in 2022. The first book on my 21 books list is The Chosen and the Beautiful by Ning Vo. I have not read this book. This is a Great Gatsby reimagining, and I am still super interested in this one, but this is one that I haven't found yet. The whole introduction of this video kind of talks about how I don't seek out books, how I just happen to find them. So it is kind of a random affair if I get to these books on the list or not, whether I find them on audio or I find them in a little free library or a used bookstore or at some kind of library sale. So a lot of these I haven't read just by chance, and the first one I have not read. Book number 2 was another 2021 release, and this was Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. I have not read this book either. This is about a person detransitioning and their love triangle and the idea of detransitioning in general, and also bringing a baby into an already complicated love affair. I am still interested in this book. I definitely have lost a lot of interest in this book just because I have heard some people that I like really not like this book, and it does seem a little overdramatic literary fiction, which is not really the kind of books that I've been reading lately. But if I found Detransition Baby, I would definitely give it a try. The third book is The Memory Police by Yoko Agawa. I had read one book by Yoko Agawa, I think, before I picked this book, and I am still super interested in it, as I have read at least one other book by Yoko Agawa since then. I really love her writing style. I love reading Japanese translated work in general, and Yoko Agawa has become one of my favorite Japanese authors that I have read so far. The Memory Police still sounds like a super interesting dystopian take on the idea of governmental control, not only people's rights, but people's very memories being taken away. I would still love to find The Memory Police, but I'll definitely read anything by Yoko Agawa that I get my hands on. The fourth book on the list is The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. This is a historical fiction, and I think it has a touch of magical realism, but that's just about all I know about it. I have not read this book in 2022 yet. It's one that I'm still interested in, but definitely historical fiction is low on my list of priorities. Book number 5 on the list is Something New Under the Sun by Alexandra Kleeman. This is a cli-fi novel that I think I heard CJ Reads talk about, and it made me really want to read it. The description seemed fairly reminiscent of one of my all-time favorite books, Bunny Modern by David Bowman, and I'm still super interested to find this one. I think this one's going to be a tough one to find. I might have to eventually purchase it from an online bookstore. Some of these from the list I do purchase from online bookstores, but since I'm going to be participating in the Read What You Own challenge this year, it probably won't be in 2023 that I get them, because I don't know when I will be able to purchase new used books. Okay, finally, we have gotten to a book that I've actually read. The 6th book on the list is Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson. I read this book in November for Indigathon or Skoden, and this was a really fascinating book. I enjoyed it a lot. It was written in 2000. It is about a young woman living in an indigenous community in Canada near Monkey Beach. Her brother goes missing, and while she and her family are looking, this young woman is kind of forced to relive a lot of the traumas in her life. She's remembering the people that she's lost and the innocence that she's lost, and she's remembering that when she was young, she had an ability to foretell when tragedy would happen. So she's kind of lamenting the things that have happened to her and the loss of that ability, all the while hoping that her brother will be found safely. I would love to read more books by Eden Robinson. The next book on the list is The Employees by Olga Ravin, translated by Martin Aitken. So I have not read this book yet. I'm still super interested in it. It is a spaceship sci-fi book about employees on the spaceship, which sounds right up my alley. Sci-fi and service industry commentary. I would really like to find this one in 2023. One of the books that I was most excited for to find and read in 2022 was Mrs. Death by Selena Godden. I have not found this one yet, but I am still super interested in it. It is about an interview with Death, who is a female, and it's her reminiscence on life and death, I guess. Ooh, another one that I was super excited to find in 2022, but I did not find, is The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex. This is based on a true tale of a collection of lighthouse workers who inexplicably went missing. Based on that premise, Emma Stonex has created a dual timeline following those men before they disappeared and their wives several years later. I love the cover of this one, and I really hope that I get to read this one at some point. Now, this also is a historical fiction, but this is more in my vein, certainly more with a mystery bent than some of the others that we previously talked about. Finally, we have another book that I did read. This is the 10th book on the list, and that is Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin. This is about a time in the not too distant future where there are little furry, Furby creatures that are toys. You adopt them into your house, and one person is a watcher and one person is a keeper, and the keeper keeps the animal like they would have a pet in their house, and the watcher controls the animal. There is not a way to communicate between the two people. You don't know who you're going to get as your keeper. You don't know who you're going to get as your watcher. And this is the story of multiple different people who are involved with these little toy/pets, and all about the potential joys and pitfalls of this sort of technology being ingrained in our everyday life. I highly recommend this book. I read it on audio and I thought it was great. I would love to find a physical copy of this one because this is one that I would like to reread. And Samantha Schweblin is definitely going to be an author that I look out for any of her other books. I would really love to read Fever Dreams, and I know she just republished a book of short stories. Any of her books I would definitely devour. Ooh, another book that I did read this year was Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I read this book on audio as well, and it was narrated by the great actress Ruby Dee before she passed away, and this was a great book. It was one of the books that I read this year that set me off in the direction of reading Black modern classic authors from the late 19th century and the early 20th century, authors like Zora Neale Hurston, Gloria Naylor, and Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, all of whom I have really enjoyed their books and I can't wait to read more of. Their Eyes Were Watching God follows Janie throughout her whole life. We see the trials and tribulations that are set before her basically from her birth as a young Black woman living in the South to her adult years. Both her loves and hates, both her good times and bad, and for anyone interested in the time period of the early America South in the 1930s, for anyone interested in Black women authors, for anyone interested in cradle to grave stories, I highly recommend Their Eyes Were Watching God. And we're on a little bit of a roll because the next book, the 12th book, is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. I read this for June on the Range back in June of 2022, and this is a short novella about a group of librarians working in the not too distant future of a post-apocalyptic American landscape. They bring important reading materials to the different towns that have now been separated in an American wasteland. This time has kind of reverted to an Old West feel, and these librarians bring important supplies with them, and when a young girl escapes what she thinks is of her only fate to be killed because she's queer, to ride with the librarians, she encounters a lifestyle that she never expected. This was the first Sarah Gailey that I read, and I can't wait to read more of her work. I loved especially the afterword in this, talking about why she writes queer stories. I really liked this modern / futuristic take on a Western world as well. The next book on the list is The Mermaid of Black Conch. This was by Monique Raffi, and I haven't found this one yet. I'm still really interested in this one. I remember my friend Maria at MH Books reading this one and really liking it, and this is one that I definitely would like to find eventually. It is a historical fiction about mermaids, I believe, but I think there's probably a little bit more to it than that as well. So this is an interesting one. The next book on the list is The Day of the Trivets by John Wyndham. This is a classic or modern classic sci-fi novel written in the 40s and 40s or 50s, maybe the 50s. And I have not read Day of the Triffids, although I am still super interested in reading that book and all books that John Wyndham has written. I did read The Chrysalids. I think that made it into my top 10 books of the year. I really loved John Wyndham's writing, and I loved The Chrysalids particularly, so I think once I find Day of the Triffids, I'll love that one too. The next book on the list, number 15, is Lakewood by Megan Giddings. I did read Lakewood earlier this year. I think I read it way back in February, but I really liked this psychological and body horror about a young Black woman who is drowning in her family's medical debt. This one I would highly recommend. It was a super quick read. There were some very tense moments. There were some gross moments, but overall I really enjoyed the book, and I would like to read Megan Gibbons' next book, When Women Could Fly, I think it's called. So I would be interested in seeing anything else that Megan Gibbons writes in the future as well. The next book on the list is Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward. I do have a copy of this book, but I found out right before I was planning on reading it that there is a lot of animal violence and specifically dogfighting violence in it, and that's really prevented me from reading it. I was most interested in Salvage the Bones because it takes place in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, but I do have another Jesmyn Ward book, Sing Unburied Sing, which she wrote before Salvage the Bones, so I might try that one first and then come back to Salvage the Bones if I think I can handle the violence. The next book on the list is kind of similar to Salvage the Bones, and it is Eileen by Otesha Moshveg. Eileen is kind of her noir crime book about a woman living in Florida. When I first heard about this, it was really intriguing, but the more I've heard about it, I have realized that it has a lot to do with pedophilia and inappropriate sexual relationships with an older woman and a young boy, and I don't know if I can really handle that. But I would really love to read Death in Her Hands by Otesha Moshveg, and that one is more of a psychological thriller / mystery of a woman who finds a note in the woods about a dead body, but she never finds the body, and that one seems more my style, so I think I would read Death in Her Hands first when I found it, and then read Eileen if I liked that one. Another book that I have not read off of this list is This One Sky Day, or Papa Show. This was up for a couple of awards, I think, in 2021, and it just has a really beautiful cover, and actually both the covers are really cool. It all takes place in one day on an island where people have special abilities. This seems right up my alley, and I would still love to read this one, but I haven't read it yet. Ooh, the next book on the list, book number 20, is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I did read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a fast-paced compelling thriller about a group of people returning for their college reunion. They all have secrets, and a lot of those secrets come out when they go to the reunion. I read this book like all in 2 days, and it was so fun. It was so fast-paced. I would love to read more by Ashley Winstead. One of the books that came out in 2022, though, deals with sex cult and a lot of sexual assault violence, so I don't think that's the one for me. But she also did have a romance come out in 2022, so maybe I would read that one. And then the last book, the 21st book that I found out about in 2021 that I wanted to read in 2022 was Cover Me With Apples by Catherine M. Valente. I did not read this book. I would still really, really love to find this book and read it. It's a very short novella about a woman who thinks her life is perfect, and through the course of the book, we probably find out that it's not. So those were the 21 books that I found out about in 2021 that I wanted to read in 2022. I read 7 of those 21 books, so I still have 14 more to go. Almost all of them I'm still super interested in. If I had to say I was not interested in a couple, I think that the Essex Serpent I'm not as interested anymore, Eileen I'm not as interested in anymore, and Salvage the Bones I'm not as interested in anymore. But I'd still actually like to read those, so hopefully I will make progress on this list in 2023. And at the end of the year, we'll come back and we'll check and see how I've done. I will also be making my 22 books I found out about in 2022 list that I want to read in 2023, so look forward to that video coming soon. What was your most anticipated book for 2022, and did you get to read it? Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!